clown virgins, clown virgins. We're getting together to make the world better. Clown virgins, clown virgins. We'll make you laugh and play, we'll take your blues away.
And so from here we hear that clowns are powerful, they're playful. They may also be punitive, but clowns are also conspicuous, they're complex, they may be confusing, they mock, they're mesmerizing, and in this they're misunderstood. And from an African perspective, they're often underestimated, they're often invalidated, and they're often forgotten. And this is because they mimic, they mime, and they mirror. Yes, this is the clown, and this is the trickster. But from an African perspective, the trickster is not just a prankster or a liar. The trickster may be a shapeshifter, maybe a boundary crosser, maybe a challenger of order. They are a creator, they are a chaos agent, an agent of chaos. And as Jacob has said, they're also a teacher. They are there to reveal uncomfortable truths. They are there to test social norms, and they are there to force growth through the act of disruption. They are the ultimate activists. And often they are depicted in animal form, such as the canine, such as the fox or the hyena, or they're depicted as clever. And in many African traditions, this cleverness is depicted by the hare or a rabbit. And in other times, they're depicted as a spider. As a canine, in different African traditions, we have Sepek or Mpungushe or a Legba or a Shu. And this character is what we call the garbage collector. He really inspects the heart to make sure we're living according to truth. And as he's inspecting the heart to make sure we're living according to truth, he's removing all the garbage in our minds, the garbage in our voices, the garbage in our society, that we may find the truth coming through. And while he's doing this, he's also the embalmer. He's also the one who takes one to the afterlife, this particular character. And in doing this, he is an agent for wisdom. He's an agent for communication with wisdom. But the problem is that this guy is such a good trickster that he's so good at tricking himself. And in tricking himself, he confuses himself with the principle of wisdom and therefore tricks the whole society. And therefore, they have to test their own ability to see that what we call trickology. It's kind of 80% truth, 20% twist. And it's only when you're able to see that 20% twist that you truly know Ma'at, you truly know Ubuntu, you truly know truth, you truly know divine law. Another common character is the spider. And amongst the Ghanaian people, the Ashanti people, they have who they call Anansi, the spider. And he's clever, he's greedy, he's manipulative. But in this, he's also the knowledge bearer. He's also the cultural hero. He tricks bigger and stronger animals by using wit. And he often outlines the importance of intelligence over brute strength. So through the trickster paradigm, through the trickster archetype, we're able to see the ability to... Is there a problem? Yeah. Okay. We're able to see the ability for the little guy to outwit the big guy. So he's not seen as evil, perhaps, but he's seen as necessary. The cunning ways of the spider, Anansi the spider, forces people to think critically. It also helps society to adapt by exposing the rigidities of society. It shows what happens when we take rules too seriously or when we are not serious enough. So this trickster is not necessarily
Да, я
likable.
слушаю вас, мы слышим вас.
The trickster is always necessary. The trickster is tricksting our language now at the moment, and he reminds us, because he's telling us to shake things up. He reminds us that chaos is not necessarily destructive. It is actually the cycle of change and rebirth. So we're grateful to this character, the trickster, for the role that he plays. And of course, he is one and the same, or he's linked to the clown or the sacred fool, who brings in social commentary, who brings in laughter that we've heard about through our previous elders who have spoken. And he's often, though, plays a spiritual and symbolic role, and not just one of comedy. And so clowns in many African traditions exist within rituals and within ceremonies. We see this with the Dogon people in Mali, where we have many masked performers who behave in wild, outrageous ways, not just to entertain, but also to embody that cosmic disorder. Because once we embody that cosmic disorder, then we're able to see how we're able to tame the disorder in the universe, not just within our own selves, but within that which is happening around us. By the same token, if we go to the Benin or to Togo, we have the Zangbeto, who are also masked characters who are seen to spin a lot and perform many magic tricks, especially during the height of the voodoo festivals. And many times you do not see anybody in these characters, because they're able to achieve such high levels of trance that they are inhabited by the spirits. And this kind of speaks to what Jacob was saying, that the clowns are able to link us to the more than human and more than terrestrial world. But in doing this, these Zangbeto, they're also spiritual protectors. They're mediators and judges. They're called the agents of the night. They help us to protect society. And in doing this, they also entertain and educate. And by doing this, in fact, and what we found when we were in Benin is that they're actually able to maintain law and order in society. There's very low crime rates. And some of my South African friends were saying, can we bring this into a very crime-ridden society? For instance, like South Africa, where these characters are able to actually maintain law and order. Here in Southern Africa, we have Izituta amongst the Zulu people, and they're there really to mimic the elites, to mimic those that have power, to deliberately break the taboos. And they, just as Jacob has said, they are allowed to do things and say things that nobody else can. And because of this absurdity, people are then able to process serious truths in a way that is safe, in a way of humor, in a way of satire. So the clown is there as a mirror, as I've said, as a mime. They live in the in-between, between the sacred and profane, between order and chaos, and between wisdom and foolishness. And in bringing humor, in bringing absurdity, or even bringing deception, they teach, they provoke, they challenge the status quo. And we see this often in song where they're spoken about or sung about, but we also see it in modern day with our modern day comedians. And like we have a very famous comedian here from South Africa, Trevor Noah, who are really there to unpack very serious issues, such as the issues of inequality, race, power, identity. All of this, when we use humor, it allows us to let those lessons stick. So the trickster or the clown is a disruptive genius. They're essential for transformation. They bear sacred foolishness, which is essential for wisdom. They constantly thrive on the edge of chaos, but in doing so, they are alchemists. They create space for healing. They create space for growth. They create space for truth. They test the limits of Ubuntu. They test the fragments of Ma'at. And they do this by challenging authority, by promoting wisdom, by encouraging creativity, by providing social commentary. They do this by community connection. And in doing this, they enable cultural conservation. So they're not just characters, they're reflections of life itself. They're unpredictable, they're paradoxical, and they're full of lessons if only we're willing to laugh and if only we're willing to listen.
There ain't no place I'd rather be. You're lighter than the sun and the stars to me. Everybody's family at the Clown Virgin.